Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Game From Scratch, and today we're going to be taking a look at another one of the Unity assets in the Unity Asset Store. Mega Bundle, fill up your toolbox bundle. This one lasts for another, I assume I'm going to publish this one on Saturday, so I'm guessing about 9 days left in it. We looked at one of the assets so far, and it was the Dungeon Architect, and that was actually quite cool. Today we're looking at another one that was requested by quite a few people, and it is the Terrain Grid System. Now at first glance, this one doesn't look that special, but when you get looking below the scenes there, it is one hexy little asset. So we're going to keep using that pun, by the way. I hope you appreciate it. But this one is, at first glance, a way of creating grids. And this actually could apply to a number of different styles of games. You could use this in a number of different manners, as we will see in a second. But first, let us jump straight in and take a look at the asset. So here I've applied it to an existing scene. And you can see here, you can easily add grid elements to your game world. It can follow the contours of said game world. You have a number of control options available here. So I put this one on the terrain right around, I don't know, I can't find it now. I'll actually show you this from scratch in a new project. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new scene. Sure, we'll do a basic built-in scene. One thing I have noticed is this asset does seem to depend on there being a default camera in the scene. So one of those things to be aware of, but we've created here. Now we're just going to go ahead and create terrain. So we're going to go ahead, create 3D object, and using the standard Unity terrain, let's focus, okay, we're going to call it FF, and then we're going to focus in on it. All right, so here is our terrain object. Pretty straightforward, pretty good to go. What we're going to do is, I guess we'll terrainify our terrain a little bit, so there's a little bit of a contouring going on, so let's just paint it. We're not going to bother texturing it or anything, but we'll give it the woo. That's way too big. All right, let's go here. And what am I painting? I'm painting holes. That's not what I want to paint. I want to actually raise or lower the terrain. All right, here we go. So let's add some dimensions to our terrain. All right, we're good to go. So now we've got some terrain in our game. And all right, come on, lower down, lower down. All right, there you go. Pretty straightforward, set a terrain in the world. Now we want to go ahead and set a grid on it. We've already actually installed the plugin, by the way, so you just go to 3D Objects and Terrain Grid System. And that's it. Since I parented it, it automatically assigned the terrain right here. Otherwise, you just have to basically drag in the terrain on it. And now we have grid. So you can see the grid being applied to it. By default, it is a Voronoi shape. And it's a little bit hard to see at first, so let's do some settings on it. So first off, what we're going to do is change the grid thickness. So each grid element is a little bit bigger. Where are you, cells? Come on, cells, get bigger. All right, there you go. So you can see all of the various different cells that go together. Now you may want to pull it up a little bit. You could do that using a couple of different settings here. There's settings for the normal, etc. So where did you go? Elevation, so we can pull the grid up a little bit using elevation, like so. That actually is pretty effective. You can also do it with the camera offset, or sorry, you can shift it with the camera offset, and you can also move the normal offset a little bit. So you can see the asset. There is our grid in the world. So now if you are working on a game where you have various different territories in place, you're going to notice you have a territory setting available right here. We can have multiple different territories. So if you're doing something like Crusaders Kings, where you had different areas of the world, you can do so like this. There is automatic selecting in here. There is a number of things built in. So basically, in addition to creating grids, and by the way, we can create several different kinds of grids. We'll show you that in a second. You also have logic in here for grid selecting. So if you click in things, there's the scripts and such for automatically picking that particular area. There's also, if you go on down here, AI pathfinding with a number of different algorithms. So this will give you more of a jagged approach. This one I think will give you the best results. This one will give you the straightest results. This will give you the straightest results not using square root. And this one is custom one. Okay, so we've got various different territories. By the way, if you do not need territories, you're not having like a war kind of area, you don't need disputed areas like what we were seeing right here, you can actually turn the territories right down to 0, and then you will have basically just a normal map. So we don't need territories at all if that's not a part of your game. And as I mentioned earlier on, we've got different grid options. So right now we're using irregular with Voronoi, which by the way we could bake in, or what we could do is a box, your standard sized grid. And by the way, in terms of size, you have control over that as well. So if you want to have, say, 24 by 24 grid, actually 24 by 26, 24 by 24, there we go. So you can do it that way, or we can actually do hexes. So if you want to have a number of hexes, you can do so. You have full control over how the grid appears. You can have it show the cells or not show the cells. This is still useful. So if you're doing clicking, but you don't necessarily want the grid to be shown, you have that option there. You've got full theming support over how things are actually shown. Go ahead, let's make the borders black. So you're looking more of a traditional game. You got obviously control over the cells. You got control over the territories, the borders of everything. You have control over how selection mode works. So you can have it, if you were using territories, you'd have it where you select a single territory or a cell. You've also got some really neat capabilities here, like you could define those territories using textures that you pass in. So basically you could set up here territory textures and have each individual color would mark out territories within the grid. So there's quite a few capabilities you could do with this guy. And when we look at some of the samples, you're going to see some even more powerful stuff. And then what I'm going to do, basically come on down here. Let's throw a character controller on my, so I'm just going to do a free fly camera right here. All right, so my camera can now fly around the scene. Let us go ahead and take a look at the results. So again, this can all be turned off. The grid can be purely for like algorithmic purposes behind the scenes. Let's kind of fly up a bit in the world. So here is our grid above, and you're noticing as I'm mousing over, it has the ability to select and automatically mouse over and handle it. And there's all of the logic here too. So if you're doing unit movement or logic for coming from this location to this location, it is all handled for you. We're going to see that in just a second when we look at the examples. But if you need to add like a strategic grid to your game, definitely a useful tool in this case. And now let's go out of the logic. And what I'm going to showcase now is we're going to go back to showing a number of different territories in here. So again, just select the terrain grid over here. And we will go and turn the territories up to, I don't know. Oh, we don't need 124 of them. So let's do, all right, 9 different territories here. And we'll go from hexagonal back to irregular, like so. And you've also got control over the number of those. So we can change the cells down. So I could say 2. So 33 cells or 333, so on. You've got control over the curvature. You can relax things. You've got random seed for how they're actually going to work. But now we're dealing with territories in this scenario. So what I can actually do is come down here and turn the mouse picking, so selection mode, to instead to be territories. We will go ahead and run the game. And keep in mind, this is a project we basically created in seconds. So you're getting a lot of built-in behavior. So what you're noticing here is as we go over now, so instead of selecting a single area, you can have various different territories and select that way. So again, if you're having a strategic map and you needed to split things up, you can do it this way. And you can actually provide these territories using an actual map. So it's some pretty cool stuff you can do with it. Now let's branch on over to some of the demos, and you're going to see maybe some things you didn't think about how to go ahead and use it. This thing, by the way, comes with quite a few demonstrations. You're also going to find there's some pretty solid documentation available. So it's a PDF file, 26 pages, just kind of walks you through what you need to do. And then you get to the bottom, it's going to walk you through the coding side of things. My only complaint with this one is the code in general. It just, they don't white space like a normal human would. But that's a pretty minor complaint, and it's easy to fix with a beautifier. All right, so here we are. Let's go check out some of the demos. As I said, there are a lot of demos. As you can see, there's 23 demos in here. Let's say we want to do pathfinding. So here we are, train pathfinding. Let's load that demo up. We'll get rid of our newly created masterpiece. All right, so here we have a world with a character in it on a train. It's using the train's underlying pathfinding capabilities. Like so I pick where to go, and it picks the best path to get there. So in that case, it made sense to do a straight path. That case, it made sense to go that way. So there are a number of pathfinding algorithms built into this. So again, if you're doing an RPG style game or a strategy game, pathfinding is just one of those things you're going to have to work with. You just drop this over top of a standard terrain or even a polygonal mesh, and you are good to go. So that is the one pathfinding. So which one did I do? Train pathfinding. Let me do the other one, just straight pathfinding demo. No, that's not it. I want to show the one. Give me a second. There's one that has obstacles. Okay, here we go. So this is the pathfinding example. What you're going to see here You can set a position where you want to go and where you want to end up. All of these white areas are basically impassable. This is a straight barrier that you cannot get around. So if I start here, for example, and I want to go here, it will find the closest path, and so on. So this is really common stuff. If you're doing unit selections and you need to move, a lot of times you have to do something like implement an A-star algorithm for doing movement. And here you're seeing basically how this grid system handles it for you. So in addition to just basically being able to draw these grids, it's capable of doing all of the pathfinding logic you'll need using several different algorithms. And of course, it's got all of the picking code available as well. So look at the code behind this one as an example. So let me just double click, open that one up. So here you can see they're drawing all the cells. This is being generated, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go take a look at the scene. Oh no, it is a grid being done. The grids can also be done 100% procedurally, by the way. So you can add them at runtime if you wish. You can generate them on dynamic objects. So you don't need to generate the grid in advance like what you see here. But here you're seeing basically the process of building a path. So here you can see they've got functions like find path, which will, the majority of what you're seeing here is actually them just coloring the different points in the path. But there is the code required to do a pathfinding between two different locations. It's very straightforward code. The libraries itself are pretty robust. There's quite a bit you can do with it. And in fact, you can actually use this entire thing to create full games. So let's go look at a different example here. This one is a match 3 style game. So there's all you got to start with, literally just an empty grid. And what they do in the code here is they populate it with a number of fruit containers there. And then you've basically got the game logic here for handling of things. And here's how you get into a particular area. When someone clicks, let's go find their click logic. You can see how you get the item at the click. So where is the click? On click plus equals check matching cell. Okay, so here, so you see here, the grid has on cell click event. So when you click in an individual cell, it's going to go ahead and call that function, check matching cell. Where are you, check matching cell? There's the logic. Okay, right here. So here it's click, and it's straightforward. Basically, passed in the grid, the index of the cell, and the button that was pressed. And you can basically just grab the individual cell or the item at the cell. So grid dot. It's really easy and straightforward to use this kind of stuff. And here is the end result. This is a pretty small amount of code, and really otherwise all you have is that grid system being built. So as you can see, you don't have to attach the grid to the to a terrain object in any case. And you could create simple 2D style games here like so. So really you can think of the terrain grid system as more of just a basic grid system. So here you can see a simple game, Matt's Freestyle. So here we go, everything above it collapses down. Here we go. So you've got the logic here for the picking, the mousing over, the populating, creating these things completely dynamically, and so on. So let's go look at that last thing before we move on. You've also got a couple of things here for like doing zooming in. You can have multiple terrains. So one terrain with 2 grids or 2 terrains with 2 grids is a possibility. So as you see here, you can have multiple grids in a scene, or we can have multiple grids on the same terrain piece. So if you need to break things down, there is a progressive zoom example, but I'm going to show you here the runtime. So this one here, literally nothing in the scene other than the demo script, which is called, and this is the process of creating a grid at runtime. Pretty straightforward on the whole. Basically grab the prefab created instance of it, and Bob's your uncle, and go ahead and run that one, and you're going to see here that, and you see the various different territories. This is, instead of cell mode, it's territory mode. All of this was created procedurally. So if you're doing procedural world generation and you need a click grid handler over top of it, this guy can be very useful for that. Also keep in mind, what you're seeing is visual usage, and there's no reason why you have to make any of this visible. So you could just use this sort of as a selection system over top of your stuff, so you do not have to have that visible aspect of it. This could just be for the logic, for the pathfinding, for the picking and selecting, but that's stuff that all kind of games have to do. So again, if you're making a strategy game, an RPG game, there is a lot of functionality built into this one. And the only last thing I'm going to show you is territory. No, that's not it. It's the one by texture. Okay, here we go. So what you're seeing here, Remember, I told you earlier on, you can do these via a mask. So here you can see a game world split into a number of different territories. So think, France, Europe, whatever. France, Europe, France, Germany, Italy, whatever. So here you can see how that would work. We got a number of different defined, and then even a dead zone here as well. Well, this can actually be fed, as you see down here, by a texture image. So each one of these corresponds with a color of a territory. And then you'll notice here back where they're seen, we go to the grid system here. It's set up as the territories texture. So each one of these feeds a territory. We have 11 territories. Each color corresponds with a territory. I don't know if that was the same color, so they were shared or not. But let's say you had a game world, or you could basically take a model of our own world and just basically color code each of the countries in it and have it automatically populate the territories via these. Or you could actually have done this yourself. So pretty cool stuff. You can also mask out to have dead areas. I'll show you the masking example. So in this scenario, this is being masked out using this. So everything in the blacked out area is completely empty. So if you wanted to put dead zones in, you could combine a combination of like an area that doesn't have a grid. Well, you can handle that using a mask. So right here, this is basically just another texture. And then you have territories where there is something, you put a texture there. Those two combined would basically give you areas with no grid and then areas that are split into different chunks. And again, the cool thing about this one is in addition to just hexagonal, you do have grid-based, and you have Veroni or irregular, and you can use this for all the pathfinding in your game, placement, and so on. It is all 100% procedural. The APIs are quite straightforward. So if you are thinking of doing a hexagonal or grid-based game of any kind, you need just basically simple pathfinding with a number of different algorithms. So you see down here, we've got those six different options for how to work. You can also set how much work to put into it. The documentation does walk through the strengths and weaknesses of each one of these algorithms, which ones use the most processing power, which ones give the best results, and so on. And another thing to keep in mind is you can actually toggle off the grid or the underlying train if you actually have train hooked up. I don't know if it'll show because I don't actually have train hooked up in this initial situation. But you have the ability to basically hide them at any particular time. So in this case, we don't have the train object here. So let me just quickly create that from scratch. Oh, all right. New scene, basic, create, don't save. All right. So we're going to go ahead once again. And this is how easy it is to use. Train. We created a train here. Oh, I did the wrong thing. All right. Get rid of that. So it's really simple if you're not an idiot. All right. Here we go. We'll actually pick train this time. Train is in the world. Populate it. Okay. Good to go. And all right, it works really well if my Unity isn't freezing up. Come on, Unity, you can do it. All right, Unity locked up. All right, to hell with it. It seems like my Unity is currently in a state of being crap. So, oh, I'm in game. Why am I in game? Okay, that might be why. Okay. All right, now that that's sorted, go here. Here is our quick and ugly train in action. All right, there we go. Once again, simply a matter of going in here and creating it as a grid system. So now we have our grid to go with our train. Now, what I was saying earlier on is at any particular point in time, you do have the option down here to either hide the underlying train, so you see just your grid, or your grid, so you just see just your train. So you have the ability to toggle both off. This is also available at runtime as well. You also coincidentally have the ability to position your grid right here relative. You don't have to use the entirety of the train, but by default, it will match to the parent that it is assigned to, but it doesn't have to be. So that is definitely one of those controllable things. It's a really flexible and, as I said, a very hexy little add-on available there. So that's the train grid system. Definitely can see a lot of uses for it. Number one, again, if you are making a Diablo-style game or Baldur's Gate or Heroes of Might and Magic, this is the lifeblood of those. The pathfinding for sure, character selection, and so on and so forth. And that is exactly what this one provides. But as you saw from the example, you could also use it for pick 3 style games and handling the grid-based logic of those titles as well. So it's a really flexible little add-on, and definitely one I recommend checking out if you picked up this bundle. And by the way, the bundle itself, some nice stuff in here. Not really much there at that tier. That one I'm not going to do because I don't want to talk about decals or decals for an entire video. We got an endless runner option in here. We already looked at Dungeon Architect, which is awesome. I will link that video down below if you want to check that one out as well. We've got a few other things here that are of some interest that people have expressed interest in. Mesh Slicer, Space Graphics Toolkit, Mud Bun, and Motion Matcher. But if there's something that specifically want to see, do let me know in the comments down below. I look at your votes to determine what to cover. Like I said, we've got about 9 days left to really handle this one. And I like to spread out between them so people don't get unitied out. So if you do have a suggestion for something to cover, I'm actually kind of leaning towards the Space Graphics Toolkit. It looks really cool. But then again, so does motion matching. But that one also looks really complicated, so I may not want to cover that one. All right, so that is it. That is the terrain grid system, hands-on. It does so much more than it says on the tin. This is a really, really capable, sort of a back-end type system. But this is the kind of stuff that certain styles of games just have to work with. And as you saw, really simple to get it up and going. You literally just drop it in on top of the terrain. You pick the type of grid you want, and then you've got picking stuff and pathfinding stuff all available for you. And like I said, you can completely hide it. So if you don't want your game to look hexagonal, but you can still have that hexagonal control system behind it. Same with grid-based and same with the Veroni. Let me know what you think of terrain grid system, and if there is another one you want me to cover, and I shall talk to you all later. Goodbye.